Yeah, we're live.
All right, welcome to the 23rd meeting of the Junto Club, where we were inspired by the original Junto Club founded by Benjamin Franklin around 300 years ago to discuss topics including science, philosophy, politics, business, any topic that interests us to better ourselves. So, in the the topic for next week is Lee Kuan Yew. He was the former prime minister of the Singapore, and he basically built Singapore from scratch. So yeah, just want to delve into like because he's also one of the most respected world leader. Like even a lot of like other countries like China, US try to sought him out for advice and stuff like that. So anyway, so he built Singapore from the third world country to a first world in almost just like 30 years. So anyway, so that's why I want to see what lessons we can learn from him today based on like economic development, also like government as well. So anyway, so as usual, before we get into that, we're gonna start with some quote from Benjamin Franklin. And today, the quote, actually, we have three quotes today. So the first one, but they're all related. So that's why I put them all together. And then the first quote is, quote, the proud hate pride in others, end quote. What do you think? Any thoughts?
Pride is a one of the seven deadly sins. So
Oh,
pride, what?
oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
pride cometh before the fall. Come on,
oh,
Shu.
I forgot you are Catholic after all.
That's right. So no, but yeah. So I mean, I mean, it's just well, I think this one is just saying like often when you have when you have pride, like pride is more about like almost looking down on others. So when others are like when you recognize pride in others, like they're looking down on you, or like
Mm,
it's often very natural to dislike them. Like where I guess if you're just like not prideful but just like taking care of what you're doing and not concerned about others, then you may not even like it may not like affect you the same way, or you may not see it the same way.
mm,
So,
I feel like pride doesn't have to have that negative connotation, but it definitely can, right?
mm,
There definitely can be pride that is kind of comes from a superiority complex or an
mm-hmm.
ego. And then if that's the case, then if someone else is also proud, right? Like if you both think you're better than the other person, right? You're gonna have conflict.
Mm. So what's the difference between proud and pride? Is there any difference?
Proud is like an adjective, pride is a noun. So like someone
Uh,
can be proud and that means they have pride. I think otherwise I don't know. There
okay,
might be some subtle connotations between the two, but I think they're basically the same.
okay. So someone who's proud when they see the same thing in others, they became like, okay, you are almost like equivalent or maybe superior to me, so I'm hating you, right? Because is that basically what it means?
yeah, I mean, I feel like it has to be using it like in the negative way here, just
Yeah.
because, like, I mean, yeah, just because, like, I think you can have pride, like, like a parent is proud of their kids or something like that. Doesn't necessarily like have a negative connotate, like that's
Mm-hmm.
sort of like, oh, that's nice or whatever. But I feel like in order for you to like hate other people because they're proud, I feel like that's almost assumes like you looking down on it, like you viewing yourself as above others. So if you view the other person as having pride, then you must be thinking they're looking down on you or something like that.
I see. Yeah, and that's what you're saying. Okay, so let's go to the second quote in a similar vein about pride as well. So second quote is quote, pride dines on vanity, sups on contempt, end quote. Does that make sense to you? And what does it mean?
I think what it's trying to say is pride primarily comes from vanity, or that's like the main thing.
Mm,
And then secondarily, contempt towards others, which makes
mm,
sense, right?
okay.
So the combination of like being, vanity, thinking of yourself as really good, and then also looking down on others a little
Mm,
bit too, creates
mm,
a lot of pride.
mm.
Right. No, I mean, I guess that's why like pride is obviously like more of like a secondary emotion. So it's sort of like, like emotions related to like comparing yourself to others or you relative to like a larger society. So
All right, hold on, Mike. You can't just drop that.
Yeah.
You need to explain primary and secondary emotions because I don't even remember I'm not sure if I remember, and you told me once, and no one knows what that means.
Yeah, well, okay, well, no. So like, I mean, so primary emotions are your anger, sadness, like, sort of like your more basic emotions that you like recognize in like the like more reptilian part of our brain, like I'm afraid, so I'm going to run. Like they're more immediately triggered. Like secondary emotions are like the more human emotions. So like, so like the reason I talked about it with you was because like shame is a secondary emotion. So shame is experienced because you view yourself as like not fitting in, like with your social group. So pride would be like viewing, is another type of emotion where you view yourself relative to others. So and this particular, so pride is you viewing yourself as better in a certain respect, like than those around you.
Gotcha. So you're saying in the first emotion, or the primary? Or primary emotion is it's more about the survival, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of?
Yeah, like
And
anger, sadness.
Yeah, and then secondary is more related to like social with others. Where primary is more like individual emotions, and then secondary is more about relating to others, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So secondary is always about social stuff. It's not just often.
That I don't remember the ones I'm thinking of. I mean, I focused on sort of pride and shame, but which are more like moral secondary emotions. But like, but there could be exceptions. But I think, yeah.
Different question. You called these human emotions, but can't monkeys feel secondary emotions? Because I've definitely seen some videos of some envious monkeys. You know the scene where one gets the cucumber and he's happy and the other gets the grape, and then he gets really pissed off when he sees the other monkey get the grape? You know what I'm talking about, right?
I guess. It depends. I don't think we know enough about monkeys' like theory of mind. Like, I don't know that we know if like how strong their like identity is and like how strong their like social like communication and social like cognition abilities.
You also draw another big term here, like theory of mind. What is theory of mind? There's so many.
So it's just like a theory of mind is like basically your goal. What is it? Emotions, goals, and expectations, or something. There's like 3 different things.
Okay. We will go into that next time.
Yeah,
we can't get too far off track.
Right,
back to Benjamin Franklin and his pride.
Yeah. So pride dines on vanity. So vanity is kind of recognition from others, right? Like fame kind of thing, right? So, right. Is that right?
Say that again.
Like vanity basically is like recognition from others, right? Like fame, stuff like that.
I mean, I guess to a certain extent it would be. I mean, I guess vanity is also just like you have you have a particular like view of like, you want to be like attractive or better dressed, or like you have like certain like you have certain like particular things that you associate with status that aren't necessarily like intimately related.
Substantial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Enough of that. Let's move on to the last quote regarding pride. So, quote: "Pride breakfasted with plenty, dined with poverty, supped with infamy." End quote. Does that make sense to you guys? Hang on.
So pride breakfasted with plenty, dined with poverty, supped with infamy. So I guess
no.
This is a harder one, but yeah. I mean, I guess what's throwing me is, so all of these are meals.
Not me. Oh yeah, and the
Yeah.
fees.
Like,
I guess the pride fees on these three, right?
right. Yeah. Yeah. So
More
right.
breakfast with plenty. So it's like you have a lot of stuff. Dine with poverty. Poverty is kind of opposite from plenty, right? And then sup with
Yeah.
infamy. So
Yeah, I'm
Right.
not sure because you're right. Like I don't know. It's saying it's doing similar things with very different,
all right.
words, and I don't know what I'm
All
not
right.
sure what the logic he's trying to use here.
Well, I mean, I think I like Shu. So when I said these are all meals, he's like, so pride feeds on all of them. So I guess my shot in the dark might be like, so you're prideful if you have a lot. Like just the note, like the notion of having a lot can make you prideful.
Mm-hmm.
But and like then yeah, so that feeds your pride. But also you, in order like for you having a lot to mean something, others need to have like less. So I guess like the poverty can feed your pride in the sense of like, oh, like, I'm above them because I'm not impoverished. And then it feeds on infamy, I guess, and just in the sense of like infamy is often associated with like sort of a negative fame, but it's sort of like but I guess it's sort of like infamy is like other, like you could maybe others being like envious of you or like wanting what you have.
Or maybe other people just being infamous. Maybe they did something that is like, I don't know, shamed by other like society, and then you feel like you are a good person, you did really good, so you're a great person, something like that. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I could see those three things factoring into
That
like
makes
a
sense
prideful
because I
person.
think. Oh, and then remind me like if we see like celebrity like doing stupid things in the news, we feel, at least I feel better about myself, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Was that an attempt at a transition to the mini topic I wrote in randomly like 10 minutes ago?
Oh really? Oh no, actually no, it just came to me because let's go to your mini topic then.
Well, no, I just like, what was it, 2 days ago or maybe even yesterday was like Free Britney Day.
Yeah.
So so I like I felt like, I mean, I don't even necessarily know that much about her, like conservatorship or whatever it's called, like her father like being in charge of like her assets and things like that. I guess it was just more curious to get like maybe just briefly bring up like or think about like I don't know, like a powerful person or a person who's like garnered like $100 million or whatever she's made over the course of her career. I mean, probably is several hundred million, but it's just like someone who has that, I guess, that
wealth.
Yeah, that much wealth and influence, etc. And like, I mean, there's always the notion of like companies managing the image of these stars and all that stuff, but I guess like at what point does a person's life, and I guess this could be like
what's conservatorship anyway?
So I think essentially like he controls her assets and like like she like, so essentially like she can, like he manages her every move, it seems. He's in charge, like she doesn't have, like, I think it's paid into like when she gets paid, like she does a residency somewhere and gets paid like millions of dollars.
Is it because she has like the famous like breakdown, like something like mental breakdown, like more than 10 years ago? Is that
right?
Is that what
well,
happened?
that's so it's been going on like 13 or like 12 or 13 years. So I guess that's sort of what I was thinking of. Like, I mean, one, like, is that like, how do you assess like if if a person's like mentally fit, like if they're able to earn like $300 million or whatever, like how do you say like that they shouldn't be in control of their own lives? I mean, we could take this another level and be like, oh, every pop star is managed, like the Beatles, they, live very different private lives than they did, like how they were packaged to the public. I mean, but that's sort of a different thing, I guess. Like, at what point does like someone who's capable of like being very successful in their like in their own right. And, you know, when did they not even have a choice about like their private life? Like, when do you like, at what point does like, do you intervene and essentially be like, this business or this business, which is an individual, is like should be managed should be managed by their family, like their family sort of owns them or something.
It depends, right? I think it depends on like maybe in a psychological evaluation. Yeah, because I think family has the right to put you into a mental institution right now, right? Currently in the US, if they feel like, oh, you are crazy or something, have psychology issues, that you may be harming others and stuff, and they can just call other people to come in and put you into a mental institution, right? So similarly in this case, I guess if in the psychology like doctor or something that can evaluate you, right? So
yeah, I mean, I guess it's at like yeah, I mean, I guess at what point, because it's like, if I feel like if I, you know, tried to do like, you know, like tried to do that to a family member, there's gonna like, yes, I believe you're right, you can do sort of like the 72-hour hold, you know, they're gonna hurt themselves, they're gonna hurt someone, whatever. But I mean, I feel like I don't know how, like I don't know if, unless there really is something going on, and based on this movement that's been going on for years, like I am honestly not sure if there is or isn't.
So
But yeah, I mean, I don't know if my family members, like, if there isn't anything like fundamentally wrong, would be there for like over a decade, right? I mean, I feel like they would just
I would say I'll be more suspicious if her dad is like making money from this, or maybe I'm not sure conservatory, does he draw fees from it or anything? If he does,
I think he can man it, like he's in charge of the money. I think he is in charge of the money.
Okay. I guess my question for you is that are you in the Free Britney movement or what? Or no?
No. I mean, I just heard about it, and I guess I'm just interested. Like, you know, it's sort of just an interesting. You know, this is like a woman who became famous when she was like, you know, she was 16, and you know, like she made like insane amounts of money, and then like within. I mean, I'm trying to think, if it's 13 years, probably by the time she was in like her mid 20s, like she essentially like just like sort of just dropped off the, like, didn't drop off the map, like continued making music, continued making tons of money. But like, you know, allegedly, you know, according to what she said, like she said in the you know, like she had a court hearing a few days ago, and this is the first time she's been able to publicly speak about it. And she's like my dad essentially didn't let me do anything. Like he didn't let me like have relationships, have kids. Like I mean, she has children from before this, but like she never was able to, like, you know, essentially since this started, like he's controlled like every aspect of her life and money. So,
okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting, like how a person can be like unstable, like to the point where they can't control basic things about their life, but they could be unstable to that point, but like have a residency in Las Vegas for multiple years, like during the same period. So
especially American, I guess it's like freedom, right? Individual freedom.
Right. So that's why I'm saying, like, I think it's like if you try to have someone committed in your family, you need very hard evidence, I think, that they're going to be a danger to themselves or others, or they will very quickly be released because they're adults and they, have that freedom. But in this particular case, it doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like it was the case. So it was an interesting story, but yeah, I mean, basically, it was big news this week. So
So. Matt, you had no opinion?
I think we should free Britney. Yeah, I don't know any more than what was just said about it. So it seems, you know, at the surface glance, it seems ridiculous. I assume it probably is still ridiculous. There must have been some, like the court must have had some, you would hope the courts originally had at least some reasonable logic for starting it, but you never know. Maybe it's just a gross miscarriage of justice.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming the court probably did the job right, because you know, Britney she's very famous. I mean, she's still pretty famous, right? And then I don't think the judge would done anything that is like stupid or just like negligence, right? So I think the judge probably has reasons, and it's back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Well, so that's about it on that topic. Another thing that I saw recent that or another mini topic that sort of has come up and has been newsworthy over the last like 48 hours was the condo collapse in Miami.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean that's like I guess
I'm not
that's
calling it a mini topic. It's a huge topic.
well,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, yes, it's a huge topic, but I guess it's more like, I mean, it's more just like I don't know that there's that much to say about it other than like, is this an
Yeah.
example of like, like where more regulation, more oversight would have, like, I guess, how do you handle a situation like this? Or is this an example of like capitalism failing? Because this, like, I mean, it wasn't in like the 90s or something. This building began to like show signs of like there's a sinkhole here or something.
What I think is interesting is some people are speculating that this might be like not the only one, right? Whether it's like a one-off thing or whether there was like a lot of cheap housing made or like a lot of cheap building in Florida when it was like booming, a while ago. And it's an area where the land isn't as stable, right? So like the land was sinking and the foundation was sinking.
Right.
And, some people are at least speculating that there could be a lot of other buildings that have a similar fate, but that could just be, fear mongering online. So,
Right.
But if a second one goes down in Florida, suddenly housing prices in Florida get a lot cheaper.
No, that is very fair. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of I guess the most strangest thing is like it just like collapsed like in like few seconds, right? There's no warning sign or anything, right? Also, there's doesn't seem like there's anything of earthquake or anything to disturb you, right? So
Well, they've had some reports come out of like they knew the foundation was sinking, but apparently some engineers said that's shouldn't have been like the main cause. Like it may have contributed, but there's some woman had like sued for water damage because her walls had like cracked. Like or bent or something and like cracked a pipe, so like there was at least some stuff, but it'll still be a little while before we learn what was like the underlying cause.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean it's obviously a sad story, but basically it's I guess I was just thinking about like it's just such a bizarre thing to happen in 2021, where it's like you've sort of like, I mean, a lot of like buildings are designed to withstand like pretty
hurricane, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like it's just randomly just falls apart. That's pretty crazy. So.
Random or controlled demolition by the government.
Yeah, so that's why I said I didn't know if it had gone through because I was interrupting you, but I said thermite paint. Like,
yeah.
No. I'm sure, it'll only be a matter of time before there are conspiracies, but
yeah. No, what she thought was water damage was, yes, a controlled explosive. So, no, but it's wild. So,
yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah. So. All right. Any more thoughts on that?
No, you can. Those were my two mini topics. So.
Okay.
All right. We can move on to Singapore and how they make buildings that don't collapse.
Exactly. Did you? What do you guys? Okay, let's go for it. And what do you guys know about Singapore?
There's that hotel with the boat, and no, there's lots of startups, and
it's a city on an island.
Yeah, it's. I think it's what 40 minutes across or so. Like you can drive essentially like up and down the country or side to side in like 45 minutes or something ridiculous.
It's the size of New York City.
Right.
Like most Americans, I don't think we know much about Singapore. So this is good.
Yeah, well, I know they have very strict laws. So like if you spit gum out, you can be arrested or like heavily fined.
That's a good law.
Yeah. Not just spitting your gums out. Gums out is chewing gums. You cannot even chew gums in Singapore.
You can't. Chew gums too far. That's going too far. People can be responsible, but we should enforce heavily on people who would just spit them out on the sidewalk. Because I feel like that acknowledges if you do that, you're a psychopath who doesn't care about society and should probably just be locked away.
Yeah. So and actually, I think the prison term is 2 years in prison if you do that.
Not long enough, in my opinion.
Also, yeah, I think that's another law. I think that's that is the most craziest one that people I know about. Like, oh, you can't chew gun, you cannot sell guns in Singapore either. And then the other one is that you cannot walk around in your own house naked.
So what do? Like you have to, like if you take a shower, you need to like just like
You
dress
need-
in the shower.
You need to make sure your curtain is not open, basically, and then that's what.
Yeah,
I
I'm
see,
guessing that
yeah.
I'm guessing it's not an issue, as long as you're not standing at your window. Well,
Yeah.
like cops aren't going to be like checking in your house randomly to see if you're naked or not, right?
Yeah.
No, that's
So-
see, these are all interesting because in Singapore, I'm almost certain like prostitution is fully legal.
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
I'm almost certain it is because there's a building, like a comedian I listen to talks about Singapore in one particular brothel. Like, so again, it's regulated, like it's government regulated. So, but I'm almost sure. So it's interesting that that nudity thing is interesting.
Prostitution in Singapore is not itself illegal, but some related activities are criminalized, including public solicitation.
Yes. So you can't like
or maintaining a brothel. So,
you say it's not illegal. It's not illegal.
It's not illegal. So it is legal. It's just limited in some ways.
Yeah, I see. They did not legalize it, but they did not ban it either. They did not make it criminal. They did not make it a crime, basically. Right. That's good. Okay. All right. So let's put prostitution aside. So what do you guys know about Lee Kuan Yew?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
I had you literally copy and paste his name from your document to the episode today. So.
Yeah. So he, as I say earlier, he's the founding father of Singapore. He basically was the prime minister for since 1960s to 1990s or something, right? To 30 years, right? And then he just the reason I want to talk about him because he's we guys I think talked about Charlie Munger before, right? And then Charlie Munger, he's the one that actually brought him up. Now he talked about Singapore when he's the annual meeting, Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting. He actually brought Singapore and also the leadership of Lee Kuan Yew, and then he actually is an admirer of Lee Kuan Yew, what he done in Singapore, go from very one of the poorest countries in the world to one of the richest. Right now, actually, GDP per capita is number 3 in the world, right? Above United States as well, right? So how did he do in 30 years, right? Stuff like that. And also he's also admired by a lot of startup CEOs in the Silicon Valley. So because he liked to experiment with stuff instead of conform to any kind of ideology, right? He basically like to experiment, take whatever works, right? So yeah. Anyway, so another reason I think he almost like the Benjamin Franklin of Asia, right? So to me, because a lot of people say, oh, he's a very wise person as well, a lot of wisdom. Of course, there's some criticism of him as well, but I don't think we're gonna dive too deep into that a little bit. But anyway, so yeah, so I think I want to frame the conversation. So now let's go to do you have guys any questions for me for him about him?
Okay, so wait, when did he first become prime minister?
Around I think 1959 or 1960s, around that time.
Well, I was going to say, how old was he, and what had he done before that?
Oh, he was he was a lawyer, right? He was educated in. So okay, a little bit history of Singapore, right? Singapore was occupied by originally Singapore was a British colony, right? And then it got occupied by Japan, right? So at that time he actually almost got killed by Japanese soldiers because he was walking on the street and the Japanese soldier was try to round people up, stuff like that. And then so he went through that time, and then of course the Japanese got retreated later, right? And then so Singapore became independent basically, right? So once he became independent, he tried to get into politics because he was a lawyer before that. He was educated in Britain as well as a lawyer. So so when he was there, now he get into politics. Yeah, so that's how he. And then when Singapore got independent, he became a prime minister basically. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So give us your summary of his work and ideas.
What do you want to know? What do you want to know?
Well, I guess what did he do differently than predecessors that like sort of like what made it like what made him the, I guess, impetus as opposed to just like potential other factors in the revolution.
Okay. Okay. All right. We're gonna go into that as well. Anything from you, Matt? Any questions?
I would like
just a couple. Yeah.
I mean, you said Singapore was poor, but like what was, and it was just occupied by Japan shortly before he came in, but like what was, I guess it's systems of how was this government and economy run before he came in, and how did he change it? Or did he just did he just run things well, or did he do like fundamental shifts to how like the government worked?
Yeah. So that's good. Yeah, that's good. So, I mean, I think let's talk about before he was British colony, and then it became and then occupied by Japan. So the economy was really bad, right? Also, it was like fractionized, like different group of people. It's very multiracial. It's like Indians, is Chinese population, also Malaysian, because so these are three major group of people that occupy Singapore. And also, I'm not sure in a specific government structure, but it was like communists at that time, right? It's really close to China. So communists are trying to come in to take over the control. So you have different parties, right? It has its own like Democratic Party, and the other one, like communists, try to like come in, try to take control, try to it communists cause a lot of riots among people, because that's what they want to do, right? They want to cause like chaos so communists can take over basically. And then there's a lot of violence as well between like multiracial stuff, like Muslims, like Malaysians are pretty much like Muslim dominated population, and of course the whites, like from the Europeans, right? They are very much Catholic, and then Chinese are Buddhism, and the Indians of course are a lot of like Hindu, of course. So there's a lot of like racial tensions as well. So what he did, I guess, for me, I want to go in like how he changed, like go from like, so at that time the situation very bad. There's all violence, so the economy was like going down the drain, stuff like that. Right. So to study like how he go from that to like 1990s became like almost like first world country. I guess instead of talking about like what kind of policies he invoked, right? Because like he did, because there was so many stuff, right? It's very hard to distill what's going on. So I want to focus on actually like to focus on one thing is like what are the principles that he actually believes in, because all these policies he enacted in the future actually is drawn on his beliefs in these principles, right? So yeah, so in economic and government stuff like that, because also policies you can replicate, right? A lot of people, like I guess any government try to adopt, okay, this policy works in this country, maybe we should adopt that, but you cannot do that, right? Because different population, different country, you cannot just do the same policy. So I think the principles are the one that people should replicate instead of policies. So yeah. So in terms of policy principles, I want to go in like the first one is basically just like two or three principles. And the first one is regarding economics, right? So Singapore is just almost the size of New York City. So right now it's like 6 million people. So and in 1960s it's probably only like 3 million people, and it has no natural resources, so it cannot like using like oil or anything to do it, to basically do its economy, right? There's not a lot of talent as well, right? So there's not much productivity going on, right? So one thing that I think the fundamental belief that he recognized at the beginning is that Singapore has no natural resource. The only resource it has is people, right? It's human capital is the advantage that he can leverage, right? So to do that, he basically, so to leverage that, he basically focused on one couple of things. So he he invested heavily. So he have a lot of policy invest heavily in his education of his people, right? Because if your people are more educated, more skilled, you can increase the people's productivity, right? Instead of like going to like sweatshops, labor, right? Just relying on labor. If you can focus on your skill, like labor, you have basically you can quadruple your productivity, right? So investing on that. And then the other thing is that so based on that, so instead of, so that is one thing. Then the other thing he did is that instead of, so I guess attracting investment. So then he focused on attracting industries that are gonna use their high demand industry that need high skill laborers, basically, right? So that's what he did. He increased, he did a lot of tax stuff, incentives, tariffs, laws, to attract foreign laborers, foreign investment to come in. So he did not focus on a lot, I guess in China they focus on a lot oh, you can come here, we can do garment, clothing stuff, right? And then factories, right? But he did not focus on that, right? He focused on a high skill and electronics, and the beginning electronics or some kind of machinery, right? Tools and stuff like that. So, and then also finance. I think finance in Singapore is Singapore is one of the financial hubs in the world, right? So I think that's what he's focused on, those things that you can basically multiply your labor, right? Yeah. Anyway, does those make sense to you?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, if you, I guess, specialize in things that are hard, I mean, that'll give you an advantage over, sort of more just especially because you say the only resource they had is people, but
yeah,
I mean, they have fewer people than a lot of places. So I guess it's really the research, so it's not the magnitude of the people. It's it's
the quality of the people.
The quality of the people.
Yeah. Not the number of people. So since he's limited, right? So he need to dramatically increase the quality of the people. So all the policies he did is based on that fundamental principle or fundamental belief that human capital is the most precious resource. Right?
He was ahead of his time. I mean, in the modern economy, skilled labor is the most important, hard to get, it's the key thing, right? I mean, honestly, extracting raw resources or whatever can get your country some money, but doesn't really make countries overwhelmingly rich or anything. So he was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
Education's an investment that pays off.
Yeah, and that also reminds me of the book we talk about, why nations fail, right? We talk about inclusive institutions, right? So he's trying to include everybody, right?
Yeah, educating people gives them the power to interact with the economy as they want, as they see fit, do more.
Yeah.
Be a bigger part of it rather than being limited to low skill, low wage jobs, just sort of on the margins.
Yeah, I think one thing I found interesting also regarding education is I think Singapore spend 20% of its budget on education. So that's quite a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah. So there are a few things he also did. He also send people students overseas, right, to educate in the US or stuff. And right now a lot of people at least I took some class with people, students from Singapore in my classes, and then they were talking about, I asked them, what are you gonna do? And they said, I'm gonna go back to Singapore and then to work in this company for another 4 years or something like that. So basically, I think the government did that they incentivize students to come back by say, okay, I'm gonna send you to the US to study, but we're gonna pay for it, but you need to promise you're gonna come back and then work in this company for 4 years or something like that. So
just enough to get them established and to kind of bring that knowledge home. No, that's really smart.
Yeah. So then that's one way he tried to incentivize students come back, because these are the capital and they don't want them to stay outside in the US, in Singapore, right? So yeah,
because it's very natural if students go to a country and they like it, they might just want to go work and live there, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, it's sort of is it Korea that requires some years of military service, South Korea? and so a lot of students will like go abroad to study but be brought back for that. So
yeah, then that's a little bit different. I don't think that incentivizes the Korean to go back.
well, I mean, I don't think it's not
It
necessarily.
forces them to come back.
Exactly. So it's stronger than incentive, yes.
And that's almost like try to force them not to come back. Desensitivize, I guess. Yeah.
Disincentivize.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but in a way, I mean, I don't know. Like in a way, it's similar because, like, I mean, Singapore is saying like if you don't come back, you have to pay for your own college, right?
I'm not sure. But anyway, I think the whole point is then they understand human capital is the most precious resource, so they will do a lot of policies to bring these students, to encourage these students to come back to Singapore. And that was the main point, right?
Right. Sure.
So these policies is draw on this fundamental principle of human capital, right?
Mhm.
And then regarding that, the other thing is he also recognized that leadership is really important for a country like that when they were developing. So another thing is like he also recognized that he's like there's nothing more important than finding good people to serve in government, right? So that's one thing he's recognized as well. So he actually tied like the government like officials pay, like government service workers, they tie their pay to like private sector. So they have a formula, like they take these 6 most well-paid people in Singapore and private sector and then calculate it such that the pay of the government official is actually tied to that, right? So in that way, it's one way to incentivize like very good, smart young people to get into the government, right? Instead of going to private sector, right? So that's another policy, yeah.
Well, that is, yeah. So I mean, I guess that, I mean, there are objections like for example, in the U.S., like where it's like Congress will raise their salary, right? Like raise their own salary, and it's often like a big outcry, like you work for us and yet you earn, like double, or triple or quadruple, whatever it is at this point, like the median income in the country or in the area you work for, quote unquote. So I guess I'm of two minds about that. Like, yeah, it's like I very much like when I was growing up, I'm like, oh, it would be really cool to work for NASA. And then I'm like, oh, but NASA is like a government agency and pay, so their employees aren't shit compared to
So So you cannot, I guess, I think you are right, but you cannot draw a lesson to America because America, the reason he done that because he recognized that actually you only have 3 million people, right? The small pool of percentage of people going to government is small already. Even the talent draw from 3 million people is tiny already, right? So that's why you have to incentivize them to go into government. Well, in the U.S., even though now you have so many people, right? A small tiny amount of people actually is gonna draw. It's not gonna be, even though a lot of people are not going to government, you still have enough talent from the population to go into government anyway, right? Because you have so much population to draw from, right? So that's the main difference between Singapore and US.
Yeah, I mean, I get. I mean, but Singapore is probably like a lot more the proportion of educated in Singapore to like the U.S. I would guess skews in Singapore's favor, maybe like with respect to tech skill, like or like not necessarily tech, but just like what harder skills. I mean, so I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends what you mean by skilled and entering government, but. I don't know. I feel like the U.S., like the government, is a relatively large entity, and there are people of all skill levels entering that entity. Whereas in Singapore, if you have a higher proportion of people who are like skilled in the ways you want the government to be skilled.
I guess you are right about like. Maybe the U.S. government could adopt a little bit of similar, like to incentivize more people, more smart, good people to get into politics, right? Government, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's sort of it. Yeah.
So like we pay our officials like well, right? Like senators certainly aren't hurting.
Yeah.
But they're not like getting rich
Yeah.
which if you tied them to the 6, top 10, even if it was like the 10th highest earner in private, right? Like that'd
Yeah.
still be a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we could do something exactly like that, but yeah, there's an argument that, you want to pay them a lot so that it's incentivizes good people, and they also are less incentivized by just, bribes or
Yeah.
other
Exactly.
things like that, because
Yeah.
it's like they're already making a lot. I mean, you could
Yeah.
argue senators already should make enough to not care about bribes, but maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one issue of like Singapore, because it was in the beginning when we first started, there was a lot of corruption, right?
Mhm.
Too. So that's why he needed to take that under control, right? By doing that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, of course, besides he also need to punish a lot of people. Anyway, we're not gonna go into that. But anyway, so right now, basically that's what happened to economics, right? Educated your force, it attracts investments. And then second thing is the government. Like what happened? Like why the government actually in the political system is very, very stable, right? So of course, so what he believed in the government is democracy doesn't work. Actually, not really. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
So I think Singapore is is a parliamentary democracy, right? But he it's not that he doesn't believe democracy doesn't work. He doesn't believe in any form of system, like any form of government, right? He believes in results, because he believes like he thinks that it's like democracy, communism. These are just theories, right? What he really wants is whatever works, right? He wants the results, right? He focuses on results, not theory, and whatever works for the government, for the country, for its people, right? Because different country, different people, so you cannot just you cannot just look at what's working in the U.S. and British, and then just apply it to your country, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, the principle, his principle for government is results, not theory, right? So that's why he experiments a lot. He sees something, okay, in this work in this country, can we adopt it? And then he test it, experiment with it. If it doesn't work, he discard it and then take whatever works, and of course, stay with that, right? So yeah, because anyway, so that's why he's people call him almost like a startup CEO, right? Very similarly, because that's what they do, right?
So what was the government, when he came in, how did it function? You said he ended up making it a parliamentary system?
Yeah. So I think since it was a British colony, I think they inherited the British system kind of thing, right? So so he's like, of course, people vote, right? So he needs to go through elections, right? But remember, he stayed in power for 30 years, right? So that's why a lot of people call him an authoritarian, right? Because he was staying. Because of course, but every year, not every night, I'm not sure how many years they do an election, but every year, of course, overwhelmingly, he always win the election anyway, right? Because people like what he did and stuff like that, right? So yeah, is that your question?
Well, yeah, a little bit. I guess I was gonna say, like, I get the idea you're saying here, like he didn't subscribe to like one ideology, but like just did government that, whatever worked. But I guess I was wondering like what changes he made or he pushed that he found worked, right, and helped improve, like I guess somewhat specifically, like what changes to the government did he make?
I'm not sure like exactly what kind of like change he made. I think he basically like getting tough on all the stuff, like crimes on this stuff, right? So yeah, not exactly policy, like government system. I don't think I'm not sure like what did he do on that front. Yeah.
So he may not have changed the structure of the government. It was more just like the budget and where like focus and resources was given.
Yeah, and the policies, the principles that he used, right? So I think one thing that like, for example, now he doesn't believe like one person, one vote thing, right? Because he doesn't believe that for democracy, for developing countries, you cannot work. Like for example, like he look at like when he first started, right? When he look at like adjacent countries like Philippines, Burma, Pakistan, right? Even all these stuff like Ghana, or African countries too, because they were British. Some of them were British colonies, right? And they tried to do democracy right away, right? One person, one vote, and then the other thing, they always end up failing, right? Even Philippines, Philippines was a U.S. colony, right? And then of course the only U.S. colony, of course, you're gonna adopt U.S. democracy, right? But it failed as well. So that's how he came up to the conclusion that okay, this democracy cannot work for like Asian countries, especially when they are still developing, right? So of course you have Taiwan and South Korea and that works, but I would say those are more like exceptions, right? Because you have more failing cases, right? So one reason, one person. So in the beginning, like you should not do like one person, one vote, because a lot of people in like population are very uneducated, right? So in Pakistan, a lot of these like farmers, right? They have a landlord, right? This landlord actually control these like people that work for him, stuff like that, and then they're gonna sway these people to vote for some policy that they want to enact, right? So in Pakistan, these landlords actually try to prevent like their people from like getting educated, right? Because they want to, they don't want them to be too smart, I guess, to know how to vote, right? So that's one way so that's why in the beginning for developing country, you should not basically just do democracy right away, right? I think even right now, I think a lot you see in the news, like US try to do like democratic system, implement democracy in like Afghanistan or stuff like that, right? So those are like Iraq, those are probably gonna fail, right? So yeah. Anyway, so and then actually he talked about like one reason he talked about like one person, one vote is that in Singapore, right? If you do one person, one vote, for example, language, right? You're gonna have if you want to vote for a national language, right? Because predominantly majority of them is Chinese, right? So I think 70% of the population was like Chinese back in the day, right? So if you're gonna vote for Chinese, a national language is probably gonna be Chinese, right? But he recognized, okay, if you want to compete in a global economy, you kind of have to do English, right? So he basically just instead of like passing a law, like let people vote for which language they want, he basically just tell the parents, hey, okay, you can choose whichever language you want for your kids, basically, right? And always, usually the children, the parents usually end up choosing like English, right? Chinese as well, but predominantly English, right? Because parents know what's best for the kids, right? So yeah, so yeah. Anyway, so he's not a big fan of one man, one vote, basically, and democracy. That was a main point. So that's why I did not go into like focus on like try to examine like, okay, what did he exactly policy, like laws, that he changed, right? So I was more focused on his beliefs and his principles, basically.
Yeah, but the principle of do what works is pretty like I get it, but it's pretty open-ended, right? Because then the natural question is like, okay, well, what works or what worked in his case?
Yeah. Okay, and maybe I would do more research on that. Maybe that was a little bit too. Maybe I did not drive the right principle, right? Because I did this, right? So maybe the principle is wrong. So yeah.
But it makes sense that, if you say, okay, the population isn't educated, democracy is probably not going to work as well. People would argue that much of America is not educated enough to execute democracy well too, right? So, it's definitely a thing. Democracy, it's robust, but it's not obviously not perfect. It's usually just tends to safeguard against like worst case stuff.
Right.
Is the way I would phrase it.
No, I was thinking about that. Part of what allowed him to advance as quickly, or the country, I guess, to advance as quickly as it did was probably sort of a lack of democracy. But obviously that, there's also, the, advancement in the wrong direction, that we see in a lot of other countries. So. So, it's like, if I guess it's sort of like do what works. Well, what works? It's like, well, if we have a really good leader who actually does care about the country, like that's, who's making decisions that benefit the country as a whole, that's like all well and good. But if we don't, where do we go from there?
Mhm.
So
I mean, yeah, there are examples through history of the occasional like good dictator or king or authoritarian, right? Yeah, like if they're doing good things, then sometimes it goes well, but usually ends with their lifetime or their rule, right? And then it's like, what happens to the next guy? Well, democracies have like succeeded for like centuries.
right.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting case because Singapore is so small, you have the ability to like make and see the effect of changes much faster, right? Like so you can a bit more sort of experimentally tune the policies you're using and say like, hey, it's not as big of an investment or step as it would be in a huge country like the US to just make a change, see what happens in a couple of years, change it back or do more, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that was his view, right? Now his belief, but I think Singapore in the end was still democracy, right? Yeah, parliamentary democracy, right? Because you just inherit a system from British, basically. Yeah.
Well, you can have democracy with different levels of involvement too, right? Like hypothetically, you have people elect parliamentary representatives or whatever, but then they do handle all the day-to-day running, which is kind of what like the US does, right? But like some states have people voting on specific ballots. They have like ballot initiatives where they like people vote on laws directly. So I mean, I don't know, but maybe he'd say that's dumb. Don't have people vote on laws directly. Like, if you elect representatives or whatever that are good, then you let them make the detailed decisions because they'll have a better view because they'll actually spend the time to like understand the issue.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But all right, so the important takeaways are invest in human capital and then don't
be married to an ideology.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Don't be an ideologue. Be practical.
Yeah. And then the third thing I think I was saying this is one of the last things about he's very student of culture. He believes that culture is very like actually before I go there, what does culture mean to you guys?
I mean, culture to me means things like the traditions of a group, right? So like the food, the music, the clothes,
Gotcha.
the holidays, all those things of like a group and a group identity.
Yeah. What about you, Mike?
No, I mean, I was gonna say almost the same thing. Just the norms established by
Yeah. That's why. And in the beginning, that's similar. And that's why I thought too. No, I was reading about his speeches, his views, and I realized actually when he was talking about culture, he was talking about values, right? Like culture actually. So that's why. So he say he look at these different people, right? Because different people like Malaysians in like Singapore and Chinese in Singapore and the Indians, they actually in different group of people actually they have different like standings or maybe a contribution to society because some of them might not be as well to do. Why he's really curious like why one group of people actually is better off than the other group of people doing better, right? So I think he came to a conclusion is the culture. For example, like Chinese, because Chinese culture believe in anything in Singapore, and I believe in acquisition of wealth as the biggest one of the biggest purpose in life, right? Because status, that's what Chinese believe in. And Malaysians, they are more like believing like tradition, like whatever their parent like ancestor used to do. They want to balance like living a good life, almost like kind of thing, like living a balanced life in a way, right? Not strive for like wealth, right? As much as the Chinese. So that's why I think they don't end up as rich as like Chinese Singaporeans, right? So and then so also Indians, of course, like had just completely different too, right? They have different culture as well. So the reason he want to say this is a big factor is because a lot of people believe in like this, and that's also he came to the conclusion that not everybody is equal, right? Because individual humans are very different, right? Because I can run faster. I mean, some people can run faster than the other, right? So people are not born equal, right? Because you're gonna born with different individual capabilities, like physical capability, mental capability, and in the end, your contribution to the society can be very different, right? So and the culture plays a very important factor as well, because culture is values, and these values drives what you do in the end, right? For example, I think he's an admirer of like Japanese culture, right? So that's one reason we need to talk about Japanese culture, like weeb
So he's
culture.
the first weeb.
Yeah. So he tell the story of like, even though he was like almost got killed by Japanese soldiers in a occupation, but he's an admirer of Japanese culture, because one time he went to Japan, like he walked on the street and he saw a guy like shining shoes on the street for you, right? And then these people like shoe shiners, when they shine your shoes, they almost take it as a art form, almost craft, right? Even though they were shining shoes, they will really pay attention to the details and everything they do, and then you almost kind of shiny shoes he ever got, right? So even so, because that's what Chinese culture values, right? They value like detailed work, even though no matter how small it is, they always take pride in it, and then they do a really, really good job, even though it's very job that nobody care about. And they almost take everything, small thing, as a craft in a way, right? Almost turn it into an art form, almost, right? So that's why he's admirer of Japanese culture, right? I think that's my impression of Japanese culture as well. It's like everything is like so meticulous. Even small package of a candy is like, whoa, this is beautiful, right? Like so. Whereas you compare it to Chinese culture, and that's why I always think that Chinese culture, it's kind of a mess in a way, right? It's pretty messy, right? And that's why I'm a very messy person as well. I'm not very organized. But anyway, so that's why Japanese. I think that's why Japanese actually are very successful as a population, because the culture, that individual, they values like doing something small to the best you can, right? So no matter how small it is. So that's why so that's why culture is a very important thing for different group of people, right? Does it make sense?
No, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I understand like sort of prioritization being an important part of like culture, and like different cultures have different priorities.
Yeah.
So so is the next, what we're hearing next, why that mattered to like the way he led, or?
Yeah, because so he instead of focus on like, because different culture, so that's why he believed like instead of like giving, so that's why he focused on like giving people equal opportunity instead of equal results, right? Because I think a lot of the current days, like a lot of people like see like what's wrong with this world. Not everybody's equal right now.
I say
right?
yes.
So they want to change that by focus on changing the result, right? Instead, his point is that we should not focus on some equal result. We should focus on equal opportunity instead, right? Because if you focus on equal result, because different people are gonna do different things, and even though they don't achieve the same level of wealth compared to the other person, right? If different maybe they come from different culture and they value different things or stuff, and they are motivated by different motivations, right?
Sure.
And so he just cautioned people not to focus on equal results. You should focus on equal opportunities, right?
No, that makes sense.
Because if you give different people like different results, since people are different, have different capabilities, they're gonna have different results, right? You cannot make them equal, right? So in the end,
right.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That now clarifies it. Yeah, because basically any group sort of looked at in obviously every group interacts with every other group in today's world, but I mean any sort of cohesive group is going to formulate their own sort of opinions and wants and sort of like what success means to them. So it's like, as much as we would like to draw equal of everything from every sort of group, it's it may be the case that not every group wants equal of everything. They might like certain groups may want more of a certain thing versus others, so it makes sense.
Cool. I think that's why some people actually call him racist sometimes. But
No,
yeah,
no, I
anyway.
can see that.
Yeah, that's getting into a very modern debate over
Yeah.
whether that's a good idea. But I think a lot of people would say, yeah, what's important is giving, establishing a fair and equal opportunity for everyone is what's important. But
Yeah.
then equity is like equality of results.
Yeah.
If I believe if I'm using that word right. So some people now push for equity more than equality, but
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he's more like just caution people, right? Not to folks, because like if you try to overlook individual difference, right? A lot of people I think try to be political correct, say, oh, everybody's equal, right? So if you don't say that everybody's different, right? You could adopt like bad policies basically, right? To try to fix things that you might be bad for the stuff you try to fix, basically. Right. So that's just a caution thing that for people to pay attention to. Yeah.
Well, I will
And,
defend the US a little bit. When we say, all men are created equal, it's not supposed to be a literal, like, obviously you're equal in everything. But it's that you're supposed to be treated as an equal by the government, right? So I think that's more. I believe there's like, there's like other writings and stuff that kind of like explain that more. But it's like, because obviously people aren't all literally created equal. They're going to have different talents, different capabilities, and there's a lot that nurture has to go into it. But like there is at least some component of nature. Like some people are just gonna be faster or smarter or pick up certain skills better.
Yeah, can you recite the first sentence of the Constitution or something, like created equal stuff, that sentence? Can you?
I know the phrase is all men created equal. I don't know if I can recite the first sentence exactly.
Because I think I thought about it too when I was thinking about this, right? Because I think the Constitution basically saying all men are created. I mean, I have the same point of view, right? It's not saying that everybody is born equal, but it's created equal in the sense that it's treated by government and society, right? But it's also equal in the sense that it's pursuit of happiness, not happiness, right? Like pursuing of the wealth, but not having the same wealth, right? So yeah.
And I meant to say the Declaration of Independence, not the Constitution, that all men are created equal. Yeah, but whatever. Same thing, right?
Yeah.
Just pretend like they're one document.
No, because I was like, isn't there something about like in order to form a more perfect union in there, which is the Constitution? So, but I was trying to make the connection.
Yeah. I mean, in American, I mean that because he was just focused on Singapore, right? In Americans, it'll be different because you all these like the government like have been like I guess the black population have been like, what do you call that, like being disadvantaged by the government, the laws, right, for a long time, right? So you have you have to fix it in somehow, right? So yeah. But yeah, he was talking about Singapore, not American, right? So Americans will be totally different story, right? Yeah.
That's true.
All right. So that's I think that's all I have for today. Actually, yeah. Also, a few things he did, like press, like he doesn't. Well, something he did in like one thing he compared like the free press, right? He doesn't believe in free press as well. So, because in the beginning, because actually this kind of get into the fake news territory, right? Because as Singapore was developing, right, he need to have this control of authority, right? Because because a lot of news will try like free press means that anybody can say anything, right? And this press, the favorite thing they want to do is to attack the government, right? Whatever criticize whatever the government did, even though sometimes it could be false, right? So that could be dangerous to like developing country because when they are going up, people can be easily like incited into violence and riots and stuff like that. And so that was happening in Singapore in the beginning, right? So that's why he was trying to do a lot of like control his like press, right? So yeah, so that kind of gave me a better understanding of why China is trying to do its censorship, right? Why China is so controls so much stuff because it has more population.
That's why.
Yeah, I was like, okay, so maybe they try to adopt, I mean, of course, they talk to anyway. So yeah, I think
They definitely aren't trying to hide anything bad in China.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that was going a little bit one step too far. So anyway, so I'm gonna stop there for now.
No, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I was about to say, to summarize, I feel like this, I mean, everyone's always biased when it comes to history examples, but I was going to say this, confirms my liberal beliefs as the only one of the three of us who's, outspokenly claims to be a liberal. I was going to be like, this largely aligns with my beliefs. Thus, it's proving that I'm right. Of course, attacking the free speech is generally not considered a liberal value. So that one goes off of the mark a little bit, but
yeah. No, I mean, I guess again, it seems like this guy was probably pretty smart, probably had the country's best interests like in mind, and basically he like became a short-term dictator to like to like advance them, and it actually sort of worked, and it often doesn't. So I think he did have good ideas about sort of being willing to experiment is probably good, and it's easier if you have a smaller population to work with, so that made it easier. And also he had a good idea: invest in education and quality people.
Yeah. I mean, something he talked about is about leadership, right? You need to be strong, right? So that's why sometimes you need to almost like turn into people can view you as authoritarian in a way, right? Because sometimes you do things that are not popular, right? Right. So I think one quote that I like about him, he said that if you want to be popular all the time, you will misgovern, right? Because if you only do what's popular, right, do what people want, people are gonna vote. Like for example, like welfare, right? If people can vote themselves money, right? In that sense, right? So anyway, yeah. If you just do what people want, you basically, try to stay in power, you can be governed, right? Yeah.
No,
and maybe democracy really is a failed system after all.
Yeah, it depends on the country, right? His point is that different country, maybe you don't copy it like completely, you adapt it to your people, because every people. That's his point. Every people is different. Because every people have every different culture, and they value different things, right? For example, like China, communism like maybe works in China because Chinese people actually they have different value than Americans, right? American was try to get freedom from the British and back in the day, so that's why they want freedom, right? But China is different, right? China in the beginning, 1950, people would just try to survive, right? So put food on the table, right? They don't have time to think about freedom, freedom of speech, human rights, all this kind of stuff, right? We simply don't have the luxury, right? So
Mike knows what I'm about to say. Not to change topics, but did communism work in China? Was there maybe some major examples of people struggling to feed themselves in communist China?
And that's right. Communism did not work. Communism changed.
Worked in the sense that people accepted it.
Yeah.
But worked as like an economic system.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I guess I guess I misspoke. I guess the Chinese government is still almost like a single party authoritarian government, right? I guess I should say that. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm not going to talk about if China is working or used to work or anything else. I'm more just like I can appreciate, like, I mean, Matt is the expert here on changing, like modeling system dynamics and then understanding if they're changing.
Yeah.
But I think like in any complex system, there is going to likely be change over time. And maybe in the case of Singapore, like in order to sort of get up and running quickly, like this was like what's his name?
Lee Kuan Yew.
Lee Kuan Yew introduced.
Yeah.
Like what he introduced like was maybe necessary over that 30-year period to like sort of get them like to sort of a world, like on the world stage,
Yeah.
But maybe as like the country / city evolves, like maybe a different system will, I guess, be better suited for like a longer term success.
Yeah.
Or longer term stability.
You know
So-
what's interesting on what he said about, every place is different. I was thinking, like, it's not like someone could just copy what he did and have become super successful, right? Because every
Yeah.
country can't become a tech manufacturing and finance capital of the world, right? Like,
Mhm.
Mhm.
you're going to have some that are the leaders in that, and then maybe some that straggle, but they're like, not everyone needs to do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so like the opportunity that he like the niche that he like filled with Singapore isn't going to always exist for everyone else, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
Yeah, because then Saudi Arabia, right? Because it has so much oil resource, right? So it can take advantage of that. So you need to look at your own geography. You need to look at your people values, and then also you look at like what is the advantage of the people, right? So yeah, your advantage basically. Yeah.
now there's a term in economics called comparative advantage.
Yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the relative efficiency, at doing things. But for a country as huge as the US, it's almost a non-issue because we're going to do everything because the country is just so huge. Like
Yeah.
there's so much diverse in both people and like land and geography that it's like we have enough space to do kind of branch into everything. But for something like Singapore, it can be a lot more focused, and a lot of smaller countries will probably end up being potentially more focused and
Yeah.
their economic output.
Yeah.
But in general, though, I think educating your people is pretty much always a ticket to doing better. I
Mhm.
doubt that's ever going to be a backfire.
Yeah, I think focus on the human capital, right? So be
Mhm.
inclusive that everybody. Yeah.
No. All
That's
right.
it.
Now I know a bit more about Singapore, which is interesting. I know there's, job postings for people to go work there semi-often in robotics.
yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if I really want to move to Singapore.
You like it. It's very much. It's very much. You probably only thing different is the population ratio is different, right? Otherwise, you see, pretty much very same, right? Similar. You might like it. Also, it's also the cleanest city in the world, probably, right?
Mhm.
Cleaner than Tokyo?
I think so. Now you
Well,
cannot spit on the. I mean, does Tokyo has a law that ban spitting on the street?
Japanese are infamously clean. We were talking about, their culture earlier,
Yeah,
but I don't
true.
know.
Yeah.
Have
Well,
you
maybe
been to
not similar,
Singapore?
but yeah.
Have
What?
either of y'all been to Singapore?
I
No.
should have, but I haven't yet. Like my company started in Singapore, so when I went to China, I was gonna go there, but I didn't want to complicate stuff. So,
Oh yeah.
no, so
All right, I'll have to put it on my to-do list.
yeah.
Visit.
Jaeyoon presented a paper in Singapore that we were on together. So
Nice, nice.
Oh.
All right. Should we get off the air?
all right.
All right,
yeah.
well, we're not going to give. Had we decided what we were going to talk about next time, we could give our many listeners a preview of the next week's topic.
I think we currently have one. So yeah, I think next week was I gonna do sort of us versus them, like the neuroscience of tribalism, or was
Oh,
Yeah.
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 Okay, that'll be a good one. Very relevant in today's world.
Yes. So no, and I found some good. Like I think I'm gonna try to do like a 5 minute, or like a very short, just like like tight intro, and then hopefully more discussion, rather than like I felt like today was better, rather than like I felt like the last neuroscience topic I went too much into the science. So I'll try to keep it high level enough where it's just like that people get the idea and we mostly talk.
All right, what I'm gonna ask you right away. I'm gonna ask you stuff about there's probably going to be the core research, right? But like, how does it apply in like modern social media? If there's any like research in like how these things carry over to these, I know we've all heard of like the echo chambers that things like Twitter and Reddit and other stuff can create, but how does that play into the same thing? I'm going to ask about that, so be ready.
Okay. I'll prep an answer for that.
All right.
All right. So anything else from you, Shu, since this is your episode?
That's pretty good. That's all I have.
All right. Well, then I will take us offline. So